Go
Hi,
ahead.
everybody. Welcome to our virtual Career Tuesday. We are very excited to have another top employer with us today. We have DLC Management, real estate entrepreneurs. So for all of you that are going to be watching this session, there are so many different avenues of working with DLC in construction, development, finance, leasing, legal, marketing, property management, strategic consulting. There's a little bit of everything with the company that we'll be sharing some details on with you. They've got about 185 years of combined management experience in this area. A lot of really exciting information to share with us. And I want to introduce you to David Horwitz, who's the Vice President of Leasing, Training, and Development, and Nicole Cianci.
Cacciani.
I practiced it before because I'm Italian and I should have it right. But you have a very cool title, Nicole. It's People and Success Coordinator. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to give everybody a few minutes to watch, and listen to David and Nicole share some details with us. And then we want to make sure that we open up time for question and answers because we do have some some questions that people have submitted in advance for us. So I'm going to turn it over to you, David.
Okay.
Awesome. I think Nicole's going to share her screen.
I am. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody see that?
And
you can.
Hold on, let me just make
Awesome.
it. Can you still see it?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This is the slide deck that we use for a lot of different presentations. So we're going to go through various points of it that really hit home and make some sense here. So a little bit of background about who DLC is and what we do. We are an open air center landlord. So we own, manage, and lease a portfolio of about 17 million square feet, which is about 80 open air grocery anchored power shopping centers across the suburbs of the US. Our portfolio goes from Texas to Chicago to Maine to Florida and all the suburbs in between, mostly in major cities. And because we're full service, we not only lease the properties, but we operate the properties as well. So we've got, internal leasing, property management, asset management, capital markets, transactions, functions, and all the different aspects of what it takes to own commercial real estate, specifically in the retail open air segment. And if you want to go to the next slide, our 4 different service lines. What we're really going to talk about today is our main service line, which is the owning, managing, and operating those value add shopping centers that we spend time on every day. And what that primarily is we buy portfolios or individual shopping centers that require a lot of repurposing and repositioning in markets. So we're considered a value add player. So we come in and buy a center that somebody else has built primarily and repurpose it and bring it back into, a cash flow, highly functioning position in the market by either dropping an anchor, repositioning it, adding out parcels that have multiple buildings up front, like you see Starbucks and Chipotle in, or just refacading it and re-tenanting it with more profitable tenants that are really more optimal in having a place in a center that makes more sense to serve the communities that they're part of. If you want to go to the next slide, this just really illustrates the different service lines that we're in, leasing, marketing, property management, legal, acquisitions and dispositions, development that goes into a lot of the redeveloping and actually ground up parcels that we would build, construction. We have an internal construction department that manages the process, and then finance. Acquisitions and finance really deal a lot with going out and refinancing loans for the centers or buying and selling the portfolios themselves. The slide really speaks to some of the tenants that you'll see in our portfolio. It's really, the power centers of America of not only the major retailers that are in open air centers along with grocery stores, but the Bed Bath & Beyonds, Kohl's, Walmart's, Target's, Burlington's, TJ Maxx's, all the way down to little local mom and pop pizza, hair salons, nail salons that really help make a center what it is in a local community. And we've even got a slide of a typical power center of ours. This one's in Birmingham, Alabama. This is a very large center. It's about 500,000 square feet. And you can see just by the complexity of the layout of the property, it's got, you know, a Lowe's, which is well over 100,000 feet, all the way around to Best Buy and a Sprouts and Petco, Michael's Crafts, to out parcel buildings that have DQ and IHOP in them. So it's a real soup to nuts type property that, you know, all open air that really serves not only the local community, but a lot of national tenants in this regional corridor of Birmingham, Alabama. And I'll let Nicole kind of speak to the corporate culture and other aspects of our business.
Yeah, so the next couple of slides are all about our culture, which we have a very strong culture here, and we define it by #success, which we define it as working together to create a personally rewarding, productive, respectful, profitable, and enjoyable place to work. So we feel that in order to achieve this #success culture that we have, the first and foremost is creating a best-in-class team, enterprise scale growth, and speed to execution. A big part of our culture also is the teamwork and collaboration side. So we're very team oriented, very collaborative. Everyone works together departmentally and of course within cross departmentally and of course within each department as well. For the 4th year in a row this year, we've also been named a great place to work. And this is all data collected by our employees. We take a survey each year. So we're very happy that for 4th year, we've also been given this designation as well. Oops, sorry about that. Go back one slide. So for a lot of the, a big portion of my role here at DLC as a people and #success coordinator is focusing a lot on the entry-level recruitment. So whether that's our entry-level full-time positions, and in addition to our into our internship programs as well. So typically across the board from an entry-level perspective, we typically hire leasing associates, which I also work very closely with David on, you know, entry-level positions in accounting, property management, and then analyst positions as well. And then also every year, every summer actually, we have a 8-week paid, very hands-on learning training summer internship program, which is primarily focused in our leasing department. And again, I work closely with that on David in terms of hiring our interns. And we typically we have 2 spots open for the internship program.
Nicole, can I just ask you a question there on the internship program? So the job description says you could be a junior or a senior. So seniors can apply for the internship role?
Yeah, we do that selfishly because we use it as a recruiting tool. You know, we typically want, you know, rising seniors or, you know, juniors between their junior and senior year, or seniors who really want to, you know, kick the tires and see what we're all about. And it's a way for us to let them test drive the company and see if we think they're right to bring on board full time. The goal of the internship is to leave with an offer from us to come on board full time.
Correct.
Okay, good. So normally, so for the junior internship, the offer is going to be for the following year for full time.
Right.
But for the seniors that do that internship,
yeah,
is that going to be at the end of the internship is when you would join as an associate if it all works out well on both sides?
It would. Sometimes we get December grads who will, like seniors who will do the internship in the summer and then go back for one more semester. But yeah, we would consider, you know, graduating seniors to come on board in the internship if we really thought they were a high likelihood of converting to full-time employment.
Okay. And this might be a good time for us to let everybody know that the jobs are posted in Handshake. And just to reiterate what you said, Nicole, there are accountant roles, real estate sales associate, real estate coordinators, and then the leasing interns, really across the board. And I know that there are a couple other positions here as well. There's an accounting administrator, but what I liked about the conversation we had earlier when we've talked about the company and when you've been to the career fairs is that it's really in every area, you know, where you were talking about this is not just a finance role or just a real estate role. It's, you know, across the company in all the organizations that you're hiring for these roles. So can you talk for
Mhm.
us for just a minute or two about what kind of skills you look for in students?
Sure. So, I mean, of course, it depends on each role. So, for instance, someone in that we look for in the leasing sales role, we're going to look for a different skill set than, an accounting role. But generally speaking, a big part of when we hire, we do look for a cultural fit since it is very big and important to us. We are a people first organization. So, on the cultural side, definitely someone who is, again, collaborative team player, someone who has, a very positive can-do attitude, wants to roll up their sleeves and come in and really learn and absorb as much information as possible. A lot of the technical stuff we can teach, but the 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 soft skills within the culture is probably the most important thing that we do look for.
Yeah. I think one of the things to mention is because we're so entrepreneurial as a company, when you come in and buy shopping centers that need to be repositioned and really creatively thought about, it requires a team that has to collaborate with each other. So folks that like to function heads down, analytical, remotely working without a lot of interaction tend not to do as well as people who are very heads up, forward facing. Even in the accounting department, the accounting department collaborates with each other on such a frequent daily basis that they take lunch breaks together. They literally stop working and go eat in the cafe together as a group to socialize. So it's very, very much, it feels more like a Google office than it does a commercial real estate company.
And where are the most of the positions located?
Most of our companies in Elmsford. I mean,
Yeah.
Nicole can elaborate by split up of office, remote office, and regional offices, but most of the people are in Elmsford.
Yeah,
Elmsford,
the entry level positions, they're all really housed in our headquarter office here in Elmsford, which is the White Plains area in Westchester County. With in certain positions, such as in leasing or property management, after you're in those programs for about a year or so, give or take, depending on the needs of the company at the time, there is an opportunity for those candidates to relocate to one of our other offices and work in those markets. But like the accounting roles and stuff are typically housed in Elmsford.
It just for verification, the company's based in White Plains, New York, but we've got regional offices in Atlanta, Bethesda, Dallas, Chicago, and Buffalo.
Okay. And the picture that's on the page here, our advantages are people. What's that from?
That is from, I think that was the day after our
It was the day after our holiday party.
Our
One of
holiday
the
party.
swag was the zip up.
Yeah, so we always get new swag each year. And this was our gift last year, which is probably one of my favorite things that I wear all the time.
All right. So now I see on the slide, and I know that we wanted to mention this anyways, and
Yes.
I am so intrigued by the podcast. Tell
Yes.
us about the podcast.
Yeah. So this was something that was started about 2 years ago now by our COO, who started as a leasing rep, by the way. Talk about the ability to move up in the company. Chris started as a leasing rep way before my time, and it just really is a rock star in the industry, and it now is the COO of our company, who also heads the leasing department. But he started this podcast as a way to build knowledge in the industry for people, not only people who want to potentially get into the industry, but for anybody who touches our industry in some fashion, whether you're a contractor who works in our buildings or a vendor with one of our tenants. It gives somebody an insight as to what goes on in the business world. So it started as interviewing tenants of ours as to their success stories of how they got started, how they grew a business from one store to multiple stores, but it went beyond that to an architect that did the store planning for Uniqlo on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, to the difficulties that he had with the setbacks of the mannequins and the windows. So it's really beyond. It's gone beyond just the tenants and DLC centers to all types of businesses and how they got started and grew and sharing their success stories and their challenges.
So the idea of, if you want to learn a business, right? If you want to know what DLC does.
Beyond real estate, business, general business, this is a great podcast to understand the business world.
Yep. So, I mean, for students who are interested in the company and, knowing that it's one of the great places to work, which congratulations on that. I found that just watching a couple of them, even just for a few minutes, made me excited to want to know more, like what actually happens. And I think it also gives some language to somebody who might be interning and talking about that leasing intern role, to really be able to say, here's what the position revolves around, right? So to get a good understanding of what the company is like and what the industry does.
Right. Right.
So I think if you're going to give students some insight here, like interview prep, folks, watch a couple of those podcasts, and it's right on your website.
Right. I do have to say, one of my pet peeves of interviewing not only interns, but anybody in the business is, I think people do the minimum of going to a company's website and just going through the tabs of the website to glean as much knowledge as they can, and they kind of leave it off at that point.
Right.
But to really impress me that you spent time preparing for an interview, go beyond that and dig into some aspect of the business or a tenant of ours or any other company you're interviewing with, and know a little bit more about them to bring some value to the table to show that you've prepared.
Mm-hmm. So that is what these Virtual Career Tuesdays are all about, right? So the students that are doing their prep work and learning about a company, or they already recognize that they want to apply at DLC, these are the insight tips, right? So Nicole, what's one tip that you would give for somebody who's applying for really any one of the positions, but what does a student who's going to apply need to know?
Well, I was going to obviously speak to what David said about making sure you prep. So aside from, again, kind of going through our website, which we definitely provide a lot of information on, and it's great. But there's a lot of outside knowledge and research people can do. So again, obviously listening to our podcast, Retail Retold, there's many other podcasts regarding the industry out there as well. And, with technology these days and social media, DLC is very has a large presence on social media. So whether that's Instagram and the LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We have some videos out on YouTube. So doing that research as well and really digging through our posts and different content, I think that's a big way to show us that you did your research and took time to prepare by speaking with us.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one other thing that I really strive for in an interview with students is, we're pretty informal, just like you guys are very informal as you've demonstrated as a school. What Nicole and I really want to get out of an interview with somebody is to know them. So my advice is get real and get real quick. Like, the faster you can show me your personality, what you're made of, and who you truly are. We spend more time in interviews trying to get around the answers that students give us that they think we want to hear versus what I really want to know about you.
Right. Can you give us an example, David, of a type of question that you would use to try to get to know a student?
Yeah. So one of the things I love to ask is, to ask a student to tell me about the biggest adversity you've had in life. I want to know how you think through and overcome problems. I don't want to know how you can demonstrate to me in your resume how you led. I want to know how you solved a problem that was put in front of you. I want to know how you think through, and whether you got completely blindsided by it and have a story to tell me that talked about the failure of it, but what you learned from it. That is equally as important to me as how you champion through something.
Right. Right. And Sue got a good point here about being authentic. I think, employers and people in general can tell if a question and an answer is really scripted, right? So like sometimes students will think, well, I really want to practice this, so I'm going to write out the answer and I'm going to practice it, which is great to have it in your mind. But then, take that next step to be able to relate it, as a story, as opposed to, just an answer.
Our interviews, interview process feels more like a guest on a talk show than it does an interview, where it's a strolling conversation of about 30 minutes initially, but we really want to get to know all aspects of somebody.
Okay. And what is the process? So does it start with a phone interview and then a video interview? How does that work?
So I'll take this. So typically for the first step in our interview process, so once I receive the application, the resume from the candidate, our first step is for all candidates to take a predictive index assessment, or PI. which is really just a personality test. It kind of gives us an insight into who the candidate is, kind of how their their personality is sort of naturally hardwired for each role in the organization. Sort of like I mentioned earlier, someone that we look for a sales position is going to have a different makeup traditionally than someone for like an accounting or an analyst, more heads down type role. So that's always the first step in the process. And then after that, I typically schedule a video call with myself. And then if the position that the person's applying for is related to leasing, I include David as well. That's usually about a half-hour call. And then assuming that call goes well, we have the candidate meet with maybe about 3 to 4 other teammates on the team. And it can be from a variety of departments as well. We always like to include people from other areas just to kind of give everyone the full picture. And then the final step in the process is we ask candidates to take one more assessment. It's called the Wonderlic, which if there's any football fans out there, the NFL uses it on their football players. And this is more of a cognitive ability assessment. So it's 12-minute test. There's 50 questions. You just try to get through as many as you can within the 12 minutes. And then after that is interview team will get together, we debrief and we make a decision. So that would be the entire interview process for any of our positions, whether they're full-time or internships as well.
Okay, so tell me about advice for both of those assessments, because I'm not even interviewing with you and my heart started beating a little bit when I heard the assessment.
I know.
So the predictive index is easy. The predictive index was actually started in the 50s by a Harvard scientist, and it's a sociology test. It basically just measures how you're hardwired. So it's not really a quiz because there's no right or wrong answers. You basically check off words that apply to you that you would use to describe yourself or other people would. And what it does is help us hire right, because nothing is worse than a mishire where it has such a negative repercussion around the department and the company. So we want to make sure we're putting people in the right roles that they're hardwired for, because nothing is more difficult than hiring somebody for accounting who has a sales profile and they have to strive so much harder to be mediocre as an accountant, where they just exhaust their battery by the end of the day. So it's hiring the right person for the role. It's really a fun test. It's just checking off words. The Wonderlic is really, that has some history to it as well, but it was started and used by the NFL on quarterbacks, I think, where it measures raw intelligence. So it's, 50 questions, 12 minutes, however many you can do. With a company like ours that's very entrepreneurial, where people have to kind of juggle and, take on multitasking, keeps plate spinning, it really helps us understand how, mutable somebody is in terms of being able to transition from one task to another and not lose focus or ability to multitask.
Okay. And then, because we're on the career side and I'm going to always be, thinking about the student, if somebody applies for an accounting role right, and they take that assessment, and the assessment really, from your point of view, looking at it, it seems to lead towards they'd be much better in like the acquisitions side. Would you use that in any way to say you applied for this role, but would you be interested in a different type of role?
Yeah,
I think we have.
Yeah, we've done it, and we've done this previously in the past. We've had candidates apply that, again, maybe don't have the ideal fit or PI fit for what they're applying for. We've opened it up, for their interest in other open positions or other areas too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very wide in terms of what it measures. So for instance, in the leasing department, when somebody takes the predictive index test, it comes back, and what we're looking for is a profile in a range. So they can be anywhere on that scale in the range. What it really does is help us understand, okay, if we put this person in that role, what is it going to look like to manage this person so that they're happy and we're happy with them? So it gives us kind of a benchmark on what bringing this person into the organization is going to look like.
Right, and what things are going to come more naturally
and what
to
we
the person, and what things they're really going to have to really work hard on to accomplish. So so it helps us determine that as well.
Okay, and that's the same for both the internship as well as the full-time roles?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about LinkedIn for a few moments. Do either one of you use it? I know we are both on LinkedIn because now we're connected to both of you, but how do you use it from a hiring standpoint?
So for me, I don't know how much David used it for hiring, but for me, I mean, I use it. I'm pretty much in it day in and day out, reaching out to candidates proactively, and maybe whether depending on their profile and their background, whether it's for a specific position or reaching out to them just for any general interest in DLC, and again, kind of furthering the conversation and seeing what's a fit. So I really use it for that.
Yeah. As I talk to students, they will oftentimes link in with me, which I love because it gives them an understanding of the business. Because if they're linking in with me, they're also linking in with, everybody else who I'm linked in with, but it gives them, news feed and like information in their posts that help them understand the business a little bit more. We live in it on a daily basis. I'm networking and talking to other peers in my industry as well as other people in my industry for events and things that are going on. And it's really kind of the way we communicate on a professional level to hit multiple people at once.
Okay. And on a data analytics side, because that feeds everything now, when we're talking to students about creating their own profile and the skills that we want to make sure like that they're hitting in that profile, can you think of a few of them that would be important for them to have included in their profile? Is it project management? Is it that ability to synthesize information? So when you're doing your searches, either way.
Yeah, it's really building who you are and who your interests are and who you want to connect with. So it's less about, when I link in with somebody new, I don't really spend a lot of time going into their profile and looking at their history so much as I want to connect with them in real time and talk to them about like forward facing, like what are you doing going forward? What are you, if it's a retailer that I'm dealing with, or if it's somebody in the industry that, I want to work with and through to understand something better, it's using it as kind of the phone book almost to say, I need to get to the right person to help me, and then whatever I can do to help them as well. It's creating that social network.
Right. And Nicole, do you use it a little bit differently on the recruiting side?
I mean, yeah, so I definitely focus on their, work experience and history. I definitely look through that probably more than David does, but again, to David's point, especially on your LinkedIn profile, kind of, I know there's an area where in the beginning you could share a little bio and a write-up of who you are. I like when candidates have that. It's a nice quick synopsis for us to be able to read and say, this person would be great. And then obviously it'll dive into their work history and organizations and things that they are a part of, or hobbies and interests and stuff. But I think having that is good too.
Excellent. You guys are giving some great info here. This is why we wanted to bring you in. So I just want to see, so we do have some students on here. So I want to see if there are any questions that anybody wants to ask at the moment. You can put it in the chat, or you can just ask your question out loud, because I'll just keep talking for like 3 hours and I'll keep asking all the questions.
Kathy, you pretty much covered every question that I had in my head. So I do think this has been overall a very good sum up so far of things that I think every student would want to know.
Okay. Let's see. Anybody on our team have questions that they want to ask?
Yeah, no questions in the chat. Well, not for me. I don't want to speak for anyone else. This is Sue. But yeah, I think that you've done a wonderful job covering all the topics that we would try to coach students on if they were preparing for an interview with you folks. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So David, one question for you. And this is, from some of the conversations that we've had, like when you're in an interview with a candidate, right? And they're answering some questions. I know you said that you're really working to try to get to see who they are, right? To know who they are. How does somebody do that, but without crossing that line, right? Without starting the interview with, hey, how's it going? That fine line of not being too casual, but being able to show who they are.
Well, I think that's kind of the art and the science as well of, I want to know their emotional intelligence. I want to know if this is a candidate that has the maturity and the ability to convey themselves in a professional manner, or if it's somebody who's going to need some coaching along that way, if they're if they're starting out as a intern interviewee looking in a junior level coming on board. But I think it's not a lot of people have a ton of interview experience, so they kind of freeze when they're asked a question. But I think they quickly warm up when they realize you're not in front of a firing squad. This is really a conversation that we're having. So it's just exhaling and getting comfortable enough to share a story. So I think having that in your mind of this is really a conversation with a company, not an inquisition or a deposition. It's sharing a part of your life or an experience in a way that is put forth in a relevant manner to say to this company, here's something I've done or experienced which you might find valuable in having me join you.
That's very helpful. Nicole, how about you? Have you ever had one of those moments where you're in the interview and you're going, no, no?
Yeah, well, actually, I was just gonna, piggyback off David, from my personal experience from interviewing at DLC. So I've been with the company about 3 years, almost 3 years now. And, interviewing, I totally understand it can definitely be scary and intimidating, and people start to freeze up and they try to rehearse and practice as much as they can. But coming into DLC and meeting with a variety of teammates, for my position, I met with a lot of our executive members, which again, normally you would think is like super scary. But our interview style here is definitely more conversational, and it's not, we don't want you to be afraid. We want you to, again, be authentic and be comfortable and be able to be yourself and, obviously talk freely and, us still being professional, but not being so, timid and afraid to show us who you are. But so, from my experience here, it was great conversations I had throughout my interviews. So.
Okay, that helps a lot. And I had one other question. So, once they get past that assessment, and they get in the video in the room that they can actually talk to you, do you talk about anything on that assessment in your interview? Or is it really like you made it to the point, we know which job you're interviewing for, and then you just kind of go right into the interview?
So I've had students or candidates ask about it, again, because not most people don't understand what it is or why it's part of our process. So I've had people actually ask themselves what it's about. And we've gone through kind of high level overview just to explain what it is. And I can send them their results after the call just so they can, see the pattern, and it usually gives themselves a little summary. So yeah, usually if they ask, we'll definitely talk about it.
Okay.
It tends to give me a framework.
Okay.
When we talk to, because we have the results and the resume when we're interviewing a candidate. And I think it's very helpful to Nicole and I and everyone in the company where if I see the results of the predictive index, that gives me a place to start. Because, for instance, in leasing, if I'm looking for a candidate that has a high drive and a high social, outreach with people, I expect to see that in the predictive index. So where it is, I might lean in and ask questions about, tell me how, the last time you were at a party, how you worked a room, or how you, stepped outside of your comfort zone to meet a lot of people, and how you, build a relationship. So it gives me a direction to go to have them open up and say, oh, I got a story or a situation where this is applicable. Let me share that with you, because it's through that type of questioning and leaning into how they're hardwired that gives us the results to know if we have a potential match for a candidate or not.
Okay. And so one last question, and because there's such a wide range of answers when we ask this question to employers, do you ask for or review cover letters if it's part of the application process?
So we don't require cover letters. Some people submit them and I think they're great. I definitely go through them and read them because I know people take a lot of time to write them out. But it's not a requirement. The only requirement is really the resume, but it's definitely always helpful to add a cover letter. Explain why you're interested in DLC and what you're looking for. And it just kind of gives us that framework before we even actually speak with you. So.
Okay, so as long as it's a well-constructed, specifically for DLC cover letter that can maybe start telling a little bit of that story,
yeah,
then it's worth it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
All
I will
right.
say the one thing I like the most about interviews, and I don't always get them, but sometimes when we get thank you notes afterwards, anything that illustrates what they liked about the interview, and maybe some of the challenges or things that they thought of afterwards, where, if they would have answered a question differently or they didn't expect to be asked about something. I love the reaction afterwards.
Yeah,
I agree. And it used to be that we would tell students, a handwritten thank you note on a nice piece of linen, sent in the mail
Right.
is just so profound. And now,
Right.
the time the mail gets there, it's a week and a half after
Right.
the interview. So I think it's okay to say, that
okay.
really nice thank you note can still be done through email.
Yes, definitely.
All right, I am excited by everything that we have talked about, and I know that there are two people on this call who are busy writing everything down. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you were really hoping that you could, tell the students, here's what you need to know about us?
I think, one of the things that I get out of a lot of colleges that we talk to is that, our section of the business, of the industry, is not something that is really detailed in academic study. Like when you go to school, if you're going to go for a law degree or a pre-med degree, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. But to end up in the commercial real estate business, specifically in retail, and even retail leasing or retail finance, it's so nuanced. I think the best piece of advice I can give students is, be curious. Like when you see a company like DLC who's coming to a virtual career fair, or in Handshake on your campus and you don't know what they are, because DLC Management Inc. is not a household name, you have to be curious enough to look into them and see what they do. So having a healthy sense of curiosity is one of the things I look for in a candidate, but being curious enough to know all the different aspects of real estate, if real estate is your major, or business is your major, or even communications is, and you want something in the communications field that's not a traditional linear path, but in the commercial real estate area, it's just, there's so many different avenues you can take that you don't know yet. So it's be curious.
Love that. Nicole, any final parting words? Oh, Olivia, did you have a question?
I did, but I can wait for Nicole.
That's okay. You can answer it. You can ask it.
Okay. Thank you. Overall, this has been a great presentation, really informative and interesting. I was just wondering, I know since we were just talking about how it is an industry that's like not very familiar to students, doesn't really fit in with like a lot of more like strict academic structures. But what would you say, like, if you were interning, say, in the leasing department or something of that sort, what are some projects in the past that interns have worked on, or very like entry-level employees that you think are like reflective of the work that a student would be doing?
So, well, David, do you want to talk about with the leasing internship?
So the leasing internship is really structured. It's an 8-week summer internship program. You work with the leasing department and me, and what we do is teach you retail real estate and how DLC does what it does in 8 weeks. And we assign you a property that you put together a strategic leasing plan for. And you, over the 8 weeks, you build this PowerPoint capstone presentation that you present to the company at the end of the 8 weeks that kind of show us what you picked up and can apply through producing a product. And it really leaves the students with an understanding of, I know what it goes into own a shopping center and put together a long-term plan to make it better by understanding, the rent roll and the NOI of everything that's there, but where I need to go to make it increase by tweaking the tenant mix and looking for tenants that have, a healthier balance sheet or a better mix of what the demographics and shopping patterns of that community are, that meet the needs of today going forward. So they really kind of leave with, a copy of this in hand that they can use on their resume to say, look what I did.
That's great. Thank you so much.
So David, just to follow up on that a little bit. So if a student has experience working in a retail store,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, they're at least, understanding, the clients, the idea of retail, kind of the nature of retail. So even though you're not asking them once they get to the company to be in those retail stores, but that type of experience could lend itself to good.
That's a phenomenal place to start, because one of the challenges I have with not only interns, but entry-level leasing people is getting them to think like a retailer. In order for you to go in and help a retailer understand why a center of ours may be an opportunity for them, you have to understand their business, how it's run, how general business operates, to say, this is how I make money. And this is, if I'm renting a space from you, the rent is a part of my, expenses. It's a certain occupancy cost that goes into everything else I have to come out of pocket to spend money on, and why there needs to be a healthy sense of a margin of what the rent is, and how you can drive more revenue through the location. So yeah, coming from different, even in, communications, somebody who has like a marketing or communications background, we've hired people who in marketing have an ease of speaking and communicating with other people. And on the sales side, that gives them a leg up in being able to reach people by having an intuitive understanding of reading them. Where I can teach them how to read a balance sheet, it's hard to teach somebody how to read another person.
Great. Excellent. All right. Any final words, Nicole?
I don't think so. I mean, we have lots of positions open. We're eager to get entry-level talent into the organization. So definitely apply. And, Dave and I look forward to continuing the conversation with everyone.
Okay. Outstanding. Well, thank you, everybody. Just making sure that there aren't any other questions that are here in the chat. I think we are all set there. And again, just to remind you that we, for David and Nicole, that this will be hosted on our website. So students may be referencing your conversation months from now in an interview. They get extra points for that one.
Exactly.
Link in with us.
All right.
Go to our website. We're happy to connect.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Sue, I think we are good.
Great. All right.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Recording. Thank you.
Oh, Christina, I
Thank
didn't even see
you.
you there with the screen. Nice to see you.
There, thank you, David and Nicole. That was wonderful. David, you break it down so nicely. I love it.
It was
Thank
great.
you.
I love doing this. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Excellent.
Talk to
Bye-bye.
you soon. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you, Kathy. Bye-bye.